Hey everyone, welcome back to the Right Media Group Chronicles. This podcast dives into the real stories behind successful agencies, the wins, the lessons, and everything in between, so you can build smarter and grow faster. Today's guest is Jason Yormark, founder of Socialistics, author of Anti-Agency. He's built a successful social media agency by focusing on authenticity, measurable results, and a no-nonsense approach to entrepreneurship. Jason, it is great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, to kick things off, what does your role look like day to day?
Well, it's a little bit different than it was in the beginning. I've successfully kind of removed myself from the day to day. So, my job as owner, founder, CEO is just to support my leadership team and the team in general where they need it. I think about the business 6, 12, 18 months from now. So, trying to make good decisions around how we invest long term and our pipeline and talent and how we position ourselves, those sorts of things. So, I'm not really in the day to day of servicing clients, nor do I want to be. And that's by design. I think eventually my goal is to sell the agency, and it's certainly worth more when that's the case. But, my passions at this point are really more around overseeing the business, supporting my team, and helping others, educate others, and motivate others to build their own business and build a life of freedom for themselves.
I mean, we touched point previously that you have been in the marketing space for 20 years. So, what would you say has changed the most since obviously beginning of time and now?
Well, as much as I would like to admit that it's been 20, it's actually been closer to 30, which I know ages me. I mean, obviously, a lot has changed. I was fortunate enough to work at Microsoft for a period of time, and I was there right in the middle of when social media was really taking off, when Facebook was kind of transitioning from just college campuses into the public domain. So I was right there when that was happening, and for whatever reason, just kind of gravitated towards, you know, how to leverage social media to move business. So right place, right time. I got to do that at Microsoft Advertising. I got to do it for Office for Mac and really just, a tremendous amount of the experience and knowledge and the position that I'm in now ties back to those experiences. I leverage that experience to, get executive level positions at agencies running social media teams and doing that type of work for a variety of large clients and then ultimately leading to me doing my own thing and starting Socialistics. But core marketing principles never really change. It's the technology that really changes and how you do what you do. Obviously, AI is one of the biggest things over the past couple of years. So, I think the best marketers in the world, regardless of what type of marketing that they do, still have, a traditional history of experience or education around core marketing principles, really where the separation happens is just staying on top of whatever technology exists or is growing at any given time and how to best leverage those sorts of things to do more of or better of the types of things that you do around marketing for clients or businesses.
Would you mind to explain a little bit about your book, Anti-Agency, please?
Yeah, so a couple years into about, I think it was 2 or 3 years into launching the agency, we crossed the seven figures and it was a monumental moment for me. I grew up poor, paycheck to paycheck through most of my career. So having that level of success was foreign to me, but I was always appreciative of anything that I've ever had. I've certainly worked for it. It was never given to me. And I did things differently. I built my agency the way that I wanted to, and it was using principles and tactics and strategies that aren't always the most common in agency life. So the combination of doing things differently and this sense of achievement that this, you know, poor guy growing up was able to accomplish, I felt this overwhelming sense of obligation to tell my story in hopes that that would help others, to those folks that maybe feel a little out of place in corporate America and feel like this draw towards doing their own thing can feel very unachievable for a lot of people. Like it feels like a fairy tale and it doesn't have to be. And I think that I was able to do certain things and navigate things in a certain way to make it a possibility for me. So some everyday guy. And so I didn't write the book to make money. There's no money in books unless you are a well-known celebrity author. I do it just to feel like I left something in the world that was helpful and just, I'm super passionate about if I can play a part in helping anybody live a life of freedom through the work that they do, then that's the biggest accomplishment ever. So,
Yeah. What's the one thing you hope whoever reads your book takes away from there?
I think my favorite chapter, it's called The Runway. I think for a lot of people, you know, leaving a corporate job with a paycheck, a steady paycheck and benefits, and if you have kids and a family, or even if you don't, but you're so tied to that paycheck, you know, paying for your life. The thought of walking away from that stability into something so foreign, unknown, and unpredictable is scary. And oftentimes that prevents people from making that leap. And I was in the same boat. So, for me, I knew that, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I need to build some momentum. I need to kind of get that train out of the station and moving while I still have this job and kind of do both. So build a website, build some momentum, get some SEO juice, like start writing, maybe take on a couple clients for half the cost or nothing to build up the portfolio in hopes of that momentum would build this thing that would make that leap less daunting. And that's what I did. And I made the commitment. I did that for about a year. And, as I predicted, the last job that I had ended, unfortunately. And I just had reached a breaking point in my life. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't work for somebody else. I'm just not built for that. I'm just going to go for it. I've got Socialistics in motion. There's a little bit of momentum there. I'm going to jump into that train and I'm going to ride it into the sunset. So I took a lot of this chapter that I wrote talks about the steps that I took and the things that I did over the course of that runway period to make that leap into entrepreneurship less daunting, less risky. And what that did for me is it removed not maybe all, but most of the fear. And I think what I realized after making that leap and doing it for about 3 to 6 months, that the fear is what kind of crippled me in the past when I tried to do it earlier. Like I was just so afraid of failing or afraid of not making enough money, and that fear can really get in the way. And at that point in my life, I knew that the stability that I was always looking for or needed was right in front of me the whole time. It was entrepreneurship because I knew when after the fact that this is what I'm built for. So for me, it was just a very unique set of circumstances, but that runway was really what put me in a position to take that leap with a little less risk and certainly eliminating most, if not all, of the fear.
Beautiful journey there, and a lot of issues that agency owners struggle with. When is it a safe point for me to leave my corporate job? How much revenue should I be leaving to make sure that that is going to sustain me?
Hmm.
But in your
Sure.
opinion, what would you say is a safe number that you're making from an agency that you're like, okay, I can now leave my corporate job?
Well, I think that's different for everybody based on their own financial circumstances. I think when you're starting a business, there's some sacrifices that are going to have to be made. I mean, I think you ultimately have to make a determination. And that's why that whole runway situation can be good because you can kind of plan for that. Part of that is, saving up money or creating a little bit of a nest egg to buy yourself some time because in most cases, the first 6 to 12 months of that business are not going to be super or heavily profitable. I mean, I think your hope is that between how much money you've been able to shovel away and some of that momentum that you built over the year at least creates between those two things enough for you to live comfortable enough to continue to build the business up. So I think it just comes down to doing an assessment of, what are my financial obligations? What do I have to pay? What can I eliminate? Just putting yourself in a position to have as much of a runway as you can because it's like it's crawl, walk, run. To me, the crawl is okay. I'm going to keep my job. I'm going to build this brand, and I'm going to create some momentum. I'm going to do some of those things that I shared. And then the run phase is okay. Now I'm ready to take the walk phase is I'm going to jump into this. I'm leaving my job. I've got some money saved up. So now I'm going to be fully focused on the business. What kinds of seeds can I plant, or what kind of types of things can I do that are going to set this business up for success long term? And your hope is that between whatever the business is bringing in that time period and the money that you set aside, you bought yourself enough time to get it so that the business can generate enough revenue to sustain yourself, and ultimately, hopefully, over time, other individuals that help you grow the business. So that's a pretty crass way of kind of breaking it down. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you have to have something that people want or need. You have to provide value. You have to differentiate. You have to check boxes. You can't just go out in the world and start a business with a product that's boring or the same as everything else. You really need to separate yourself. In the agency game, I think in this day and age, niching down is critical. When I launched in 2018, we niched horizontally, meaning social media, instead of being a generalist agency. I've been tempted and advised over the course of time to niche further and pick an industry. And there are advantages and disadvantages to that, but ultimately we decided to just stay the course. But if somebody were to start a social media agency today or a marketing agency today, I would definitely advise them pick a vertical and pick an industry. Like, pick a specialization, search marketing, web, experiential or whatever it is that you want to do. Pick like one lane and then do that one thing for a specific industry. Otherwise, you're going to get swallowed up by all of the competition that exists in the market today.
So the main reason why niching down is so important is because of the competition out there and marketing being quite saturated.
It's too much. There's just too much noise for your buyers, and you can cut through that noise if your messaging and your approach is very specific to them and what they do. That just helps you kind of cut through the noise for sure.
There's clearly many things that are going well for Socialistic right now, but because it's purely automated, isn't it? Let's say back to when you were still in the agency a lot more. What would you say worked really well?
I think for us, a big difference. Look, ultimately, you know, it can be a race to the bottom. I think when we first started out, I mean, certainly our retainers were lower. We were working with small businesses. Now we're working with, larger businesses. So we're much more selective about who we ultimately decide to work with. But good agency versus good agency for a good agency. I think the thing that separates us that's worked very well is a couple key differentiators. Number one, accessibility and responsiveness. It seems like a very easy thing to do, like be available to your clients, respond quickly to inquiries. We're very, very good at that, almost to a fault. I think a lot of our clients have appreciated that and don't experience that as often as I would have thought. The second is a philosophy around keeping clients is more important than winning new ones. Oftentimes, clients are really used to switching marketing agencies over a period of time, year, 2 years, just to mix things up. And I didn't want that to be the norm. I wanted clients to feel like we were a partner that they could count on forever, potentially. And you do that by ensuring that your team always has time to sit back and think creatively on behalf of their clients. A lot of agencies are just turn and burn. They're just going to squeeze what they can out of their clients, out of their people, and it's just a numbers game. And that's not the type of business that I wanted to run. I wanted to always have my account managers feel like during the course of their week, they always feel like they have time to just unplug or however they want to put themselves in a creative mindset and think about what's something new or fresh or different that would be really cool for client A or client B. And I think if you build a culture where you're not overworking your people, you're not just filling them up to the brim, and you give them that time to be creative on behalf of their clients, there's a much higher likelihood that your retention rates are going to go up, and you're going to hold on to clients longer, and it's going to make it easier on the demand of landing new ones. So I think those are some of the philosophies that we've stood true with that have allowed us to navigate some pretty tough times as far as marketing agencies go and allowed us to continue to survive no matter what's thrown at us.
And is there anything that's frustrating or slower than you'd like this year for agency?
I mean, that's a great question. And that ties back to why I never fit in the corporate mold because I like to move fast. I like to get things done, not irresponsibly, but I just have never enjoyed the incessant volume of meetings or layers of management that would always slow down progress. One of the things that makes client relationships work for us in our agencies are clients that trust us, give us some leeway, and allow us to do our thing. So we move fast and we really push to drive results. And I say, as far as what frustrates me is moving slow. Being slowed down. Clients will slow us down. Nobody moves as quick. I always tell clients either on pitch calls or at some point in the relationship, I say, you will never be waiting on us. Like we move at the speed of you. So if anything's taking longer than it should, look in the mirror because it's not going to be us. So I can get frustrated with the slowdown of corporate America, but that's why I did my own thing. But I'm not naive. We're always going to be slowed down in some capacity every once in a while, and you just have to be okay with that.
So it's that client communication that sometimes tend to take, longer than initially anticipated.
Yeah, just priorities are different for every company and every decision maker at any given time, so they can tend to slow things down.
When it comes to bringing new clients, I mean, you mentioned Socialistics being quite picky about who they onboard as a client, but what has worked well in order to bring new clients currently to the agency?
Well, for the first 5 or 6 years of the business, we were very fortunate. I say fortunate and lucky, but we put in the work to build a nice inbound engine. The commitment that we made as a business to put out great content and great tools and social media regularly certainly created an environment where most of our leads were coming to us, which was great. But just like anything in life, good things don't last forever. Increased competition, AI, market situations all kind of dried that up over the past year. So we went through some tough times. We had to re-engineer our pipeline. The inbound wasn't like as prevalent as it had been in the past. And, we didn't have a lot of success with cold outreach. And just through trial and error and eventually finding a really great partner and realizing that, we needed to go out and fish for our own opportunities if we wanted to sustain this business. So really, inbound still exists for us. We still have that, effect of everything that we've done is still providing some of that. But we've been able to complement that with a successful cold outreach system and fostering meaningful, organized partnerships with other agencies that have complementary services. So the combination of those two things and the lingering inbound that we get has helped us kind of re-engineer our pipeline so that it's healthy again. And so I'm encouraged by that because, whereas before our livelihood and success was somewhat dependent on crossing your fingers and hoping things come through the door, we've kind of flipped that script a little bit. Now we're going after things that help complement that because of just the sheer volume of the combination again of competition, market situations, and the rise of AI. All of these things are pressure points that force you as a business to evolve and do things a little bit differently.
And for any agency owner who's currently at the stage that you were at, they're relying on referrals and they are feeling a little bit slower than usual. What would you recommend? Do they get out and see if there's any partnerships for them with other agencies potentially? Or what would be your advice to them?
Again, it depends on their particular situation. Again, if they haven't niched down, if they're struggling and they're kind of on this precipice of are we going to make it or not, if you haven't niched down by vertical and specialization, that's step one. Eliminate the noise, be very good at a singular thing for a singular industry. And then it's really just a combination of figuring out, what are you great at? What are you passionate about? And what's most likely to stick? Like for me, I'm an introvert. So I'm not the
I
kind of guy
also
that
like it.
I can get on stage and speak to 5,000 people and love it and be good at it. But if you ask me to go into a room with 10 people and strike up conversations, I'm like paranoid. Like I'm like I can't. I'm just horrible at it.
Wow.
So, our agency was a little bit at a disadvantage because I'm not that well connected, own the room kind of guy that brought a lot of existing relationships to the business. So I had to make up for that in other ways. So, you can't force it. So you have to figure out what are you best at and what do you bring to the table. So, Partnerships are definitely a big thing. I would definitely, if you're a social media agency, go find a web development agency, go find a search marketing agency and build a real formal relationship with them that's mutually beneficial. As many as you can. We have like a page, so we have partnerships in every specialization: web, design, search, email marketing. And these are all now mini pipelines for the business. Somebody in our world needs what they need, we recommend them, vice versa. So those relationships pay off over time. And then, cold outreach is everybody says, is it dead? Is it strong messaging, consistency? I would recommend for those that it isn't a strength, find a great partner. Find somebody that's really good at it, has a track record of being good at it, not only in general, but for your specific industry, and can cite case studies around it. And then they can do that on your behalf. I think the combination of those two things can turn things around, but you got to find the right partner and you've got to be consistent about those sorts of things in order for it to, because it's not a short-term fix. It's going to take a good 6 months for that effort to really start to bear fruit, but they're sustainable, because once you put them in place, then you can count on them long term.
Do you think direct approach still works in cold outreach?
I think the messaging has to be on point. You have to speak to, well, I think what we do is a little bit more warm outreach. It's much more methodical. We're identifying the right people at the right companies with the right messaging that speaks to them, the right timing. So there's a lot of thought that goes into what we're doing, and the results certainly speak to that. I mean, to be honest, I've gone down this path before and it's failed miserably. So there's definitely been some trial and error for us. We just eventually were able to find a partner that just knows what they're doing, and we're a good partner for them. We're providing them the assets and all of the materials that they need to put them in a position to be successful on our behalf. But yeah, it really just comes down to the messaging just has to be on point, succinct, on point, consistent, well timed, and relevant to the person receiving it.
Is there anything you would still improve about your client acquisition process, or you're quite happy with how it's going now?
It's interesting. I mentioned earlier how, there's definitely, I definitely want to sell the agency, I think, at some point. And I think part of that isn't, there's a couple different reasons for that, but one of them that goes to your question is I feel like I've taken Socialistics about as far as it's going to go. Maybe, we might grow a little bit bigger, but I'm just not interested in an agency that's got 30, 40, 50 people and multiple layers of management. That's not what I want. But the business and the brand and the reputation, like, it could be that, especially if I put it in the hands of an organization or a buyer that has the assets and the resources to put some gasoline on the fire. So there is a part of me that feels like, I owe the business a new leader to take it to the next level. And I think for me, that would be an incredible feeling of satisfaction to know that I built this thing and I passed it on to somebody else to take it to the next level. I would take a lot of pride in that. So I think I've taken it about as far as I want it to go. And look, I wouldn't be miserable if I continued to do this over the next couple of years, but there's certainly a part of me that feels an obligation to my team and to the business to find, a new home for it eventually so that it can be more than what it is.
And talking about AI, how do you see AI implicating social media agencies or marketing agencies overall?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to have a significant impact. I think those that don't educate themselves and learn to use it responsibly and effectively are going to get buried, for sure. I don't think it's going to kill all of the jobs and all of the agencies. That's kind of like a bleak kind of viewpoint. That being said, it is going to continue to evolve and it is going to continue to get better. And I definitely have some uncertainties about what can, like, in my own context, like, you know, how much of what we do is going to need to shift dramatically. How much is AI going to be able to do some of this work? I think as it exists today, the creative output is still a little wonky and doesn't feel, super human. It continues to get better, but I think there's always going to be a human element. I think it's that level of uncertainty and, with at my age and the things that I'm interested in. It's interesting. I've always loved technology. I've always embraced it. But as I've gotten older, I feel like this growing sense of draw towards old school methods and, missing the connections that we used to have as humans that seems to be increasingly being replaced by technology and phones and screens. So I think my own personal desires in terms of how I want to live the rest of my life is informing what I want to do with this business and how I might want to pass it on to the next generation. But ultimately it just comes down to, if you fear technology, if you kind of put up a stop sign and don't take the time to better understand it and better use it, you're going to get buried. And I think that's one of the things I'm proud about is we've embraced it and we leverage it and we're very transparent about how we use it. We use it responsibly, and I think that that's helping us continue to be successful.
So, are there any AI tools or any workflows that you utilize to make your team more efficient?
Well, again, I'm not in the day to day. I'm actually working on some projects with my director of strategy, who's basically my AI guy. So, I mean, we use all of them. I think there's not one size fits all. I mean, we use ChatGPT, we use Claude. He just introduced me. I can't remember the name of it. I literally was just talking about, I think Gamma or something with a G.
Gemini?
That No, it's not Gemini. It's a different one. Basically, this other platform takes your once you kind of flesh out your strategies on these other tools, it can take that and make this incredible presentation deck out of it. So I just feel like there's these there's just an AI solution popping up for every use case. So I think it's very much like my philosophy on people is use tools that are designed to do a singular thing very well instead of trying to use one that tries to be everything to everybody. Same thing in the agency game. I'm a big believer of assuming they're good at that one thing that they do. An agency that focuses on social or a singular thing that has been doing it over a course of time and is successful with it is always going to be better at that. Not always, but 95% of the time than a generalist agency that does everything.
Mm.
Same thing with technology and AI. Like, don't use ChatGPT for everything. There's a reason why you have certain tools for certain things. And I think the people that learn to leverage those things and those in their singular use cases and bring them all together are the ones that are killing it as it pertains to leveraging AI.
If there was one thing, let's not talk about capabilities now, but if there was one thing that could be automated or that could be a workflow created for that in your agency right now, what would it be?
Well, I mean, we build agents for all of our clients that can basically consume all of their documents and meeting notes. So these are AI powered agents that have a lot of knowledge and intelligence around each of our specific clients. So we use those to kind of extract information or get some, insights into all of that data. So that's the biggest thing is that's to me, that's a use case that makes a lot of sense. Now we
Yeah,
can
that
comb
sounds
through.
incredibly useful and a lot of our time being saved. It's like you said, it's that communication. If they have all the documents, you just communicate with that agent
Yeah,
and
we
then,
just throw everything in there and we're
yeah.
able to extract whatever we need. That what might have taken 15, 20, 30 minutes to do now takes 30 seconds. So that's just putting us in a position to have more output because we can do things more efficiently. So that's kind of an example of how we're using that responsibly. And that's really that's the biggest thing. I mean, we still kind of develop our own creative assets. I mean, we leverage AI tools to help ideate some things and kind of surface some concepts, but the actual creation of those things are still human powered. And I think that it's not there yet. I think it will get there. I think it's just a matter of time before AI you're going to look at this picture and this, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. I mean, that's coming. And anybody that thinks otherwise is fooling themselves. Like, it's going to get there. And then the question becomes, and that's what's scary to me is like, what's going to happen to art? Right. I think, that's where it's going to get once AI is able to replicate or create things that the human eye cannot distinguish between AI and human powered, that's what scares me. Then what happens to art? And then, so
Another
that's
thing
the
as well, not
unknown.
just art, right? It's like it's
Well,
also
yeah,
like
it's
you said, that
everything.
communication, that interaction that you have, and that being completely removed is already inauthentic, right? You touch point on
Yeah,
that.
like, hey, did this person actually write this email? I
Yeah.
don't know. So it's scary. And then, I think, it's probably I think this advancement of technology is probably far superior to anything that we've ever experienced. Like the internet obviously would be a good example back in, the early to mid 90s was obviously a revolutionary shift in humanity with this piece of technology that changed everything. Well, and arguments could be made whether it was good or bad for humanity. I mean, I think there's, arguments can be made for both sides, but AI isn't inherently evil. I think it just comes down to anything can be evil. It's just how you use it,
Uh-huh.
So that's the difference, in my opinion.
There's actually, I don't know if you're aware, but on the news, it comes up as AI, the AI bubble. They're kind of trying to make it similar to like the dot com. Is there going to be a crash because there's so much investment into AI? And they're all just giving and exchanging money in between each other, like Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple. So there is that potential talks about another, crisis happening.
I mean, ultimately, anything that's this powerful
Yeah,
and widely adopted is always gonna have some sort of reckoning or leveling off. So I think that, but it's here to stay.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
just
yeah.
the sheer just impact that it can have on efficiency and just doing things that we've never been able to do before. There's no turning back. That ship has sailed. Like it is not gonna get, it's not going anywhere. It's
Mhm.
just that's why I think people need to really embrace it and learn how to use it effectively in whatever that they do.
Looking ahead, so the next year, what is your plan with Socialistic? Obviously, you talked about potentially selling it. Is that your plan within the next year or sometimes later on?
I don't know that I have a real timeline with it. I think it's more just a matter of when the right offer or the right opportunity presents itself,
Mhm.
embracing it. So I'm not opposed to either scenario. I think that I haven't really put a timeline on it necessarily. I think for me, it's a combination of keeping my options open when it comes to that, but also continuing to do what I can to ensure that the business remains successful, grows at a pace that I and the team is comfortable with. I've never had to lay anybody off in the 8 years of my business, and that's something that I'm very proud of, and I hope when I do sell the business, I can confidently and honestly say that never happened. So just making sure that the business is healthy financially so that, I never have to let somebody go for financial reasons. I think that's always been a really important thing to me that I take a lot of pride on.
Jason, thank you so much for your story and your authenticity. If you had
Sure.
one advice for agency owners, let's say somebody who was in the same position as you were, doing corporate and still trying to grow your own agency, mindset wise, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, it goes back to building a runway. Don't feel like you have to jump into something cold. Like build a brand. Whatever it is that you're wanting to do, whatever business that you're wanting to start, it all starts with you. People do business with who they like, who they love, who they respect, and you can build that momentum. Build a website, build a brand, start creating blog posts, do a podcast, do YouTube, whatever you're passionate about. Is a video your thing? Is podcasting sound interesting? Do you like to write? Put cool shit out in the world that relates to what it is that you want to build. Start to increase the visibility to that thing. Take on some free work or some lower paying work if service based is what you're doing to
Build up
build
your
out your
portfolio, would
portfolio.
you say?
Build up your portfolio and your case studies. If you're doing a product based business, start small. Don't have a ton of SKUs. Like pick one, two, or three things that are the most likely to, keep it simple. Keep it small, keep it simple, build the momentum because that's going to help you not only one, navigate your frustrations of the thing that you're currently in, because I got this other thing, it's building, I'm excited, it's
Yeah,
keeping me,
purpose.
motivated. But that it's also, you're putting yourself in a position to be able to make that leap much more easily than starting from scratch. So it's the best piece of advice. That's what I did. That's what bridged the gap for me. But treat yourself like a personal brand, and put some things out in the world. There's no matter what business that you're going to start, there are things that you can do for 12 months while still having a job that can get that to a place that makes that leap feel less daunting.
Jason, if anyone wanted to connect with you, where should they go to get in touch?
Sure, you can find our agency's socialistics.com and then my personal blog, jasonyormark.com. I write and put things out in the world to be helpful to others. So those are the two places you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah,
So, for anyone who
thank you.
wants to connect with Jason, follow his work, or just get in touch with him and see what he's doing as Socialistics, all the links will be below in the description.